So, NAWCQ is less than a week away at this point. We are getting ready, final preparations for everyone. If you guys haven't playtested already, you need to. Easiest tips, if you guys want to. So test with your techs first. Other than your fundamentals, you should have fundamentals down. Don't play a new deck as soon as you're about to enter into the tournament. Don't enter with a deck you haven't played before. You need to practice. For this event, it is the biggest North American champion of the year. It is the biggest, probably, honestly, one of the biggest events in the world for Yu-Gi-Oh! This year. Especially with recent events, I'm sure it'll be even bigger. I'm sure there will be some memories going on with that, some kind of memorial for what happened. Yeah, so if you guys want to test out, say, techs, say you want to test for top cut. Philosophy we have is that you are building to top, or you can build to win. Generally speaking, it's better to build to top an event. So it's probably going to be top 64, just given the number of players have in the past. Top 64, top 32, something like that. The idea is that you want to tech for top 32. Let's just say it's that, rather than to win the event. So the winning deck list might have some very specific tech cards that aren't good situations, and that's okay. It may have won that event, it may not. It may have contributed to losses, it may have not. Something like that. The idea to build to top is different to build to win. Because generally speaking, at these prestigious tournaments, it's going to be a whole different kind of competition. It's not going to be your remote duels, even your remote regionals or remote YCS. These are bigger. You need to understand that the tech cards that you're seeing in the deck lists from the past couple of months probably aren't good and probably are not what's relevant now. I wouldn't say the meta has shifted necessarily a lot. There are a couple of decks that have come back to the surface, specifically Drytron and Fluent Rees, as well as Dragon Link. I think Dragon Link is one of the best contenders for the North American Championship. So there's that. The tech cards, mostly going to be in the side deck. So the way that we usually prepare is play 10 matches with the tech cards and 10 matches without the tech cards. It's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! I won't lie. It's you have up to 60 games for a single tech card with or without it, and then up to 120 games total. That is a possibility. Good. That gives you a lot of data, and maybe even not enough data. I don't think there will ever be enough data you can have for how a tech impacts a deck, but there's only so much time to prepare for the event, right? So 10 matches with a tech card, and you need to jot down every single time it comes up in every single replay. So you're playing online or playing in person, remote duels, anything like that. You need to mark that down. Don't do this with locals. Do this with your testing group. This is assuming that you have one. If you don't, that's a whole different story. We'll go into that some other time. You need to write down when it comes up and when you're playing without it. Specifically when you're playing with it, when the tech card, you draw it, and when it makes an impact, which you will have to determine yourself, or when you play without it and it would come up in place of another card. So say you're playing something like, Forbidden Chalice. Say that you're playing Forbidden Chalice instead of Droplet because of budgetary reasons. You didn't want to spend the money on Droplet, but you have Chalice offhand because it's cheap, right? There's a good chance that Chalice will do the exact same thing in the couple of scenarios where you would play Droplet. There's a chance. There's also a chance that Chalice is overall better as a card in the format. There's a chance that Droplet is a better card in a given format. NAWCQ, or what it used to be called, the NAWCQ, now the National Championship, it's a different story. You need to understand that testing those cards, so say that Chalice, you need to test 10 matches with that Chalice, and then 10 matches without it. And then if you are, say, playing online, play with Droplet, and play without Droplet to make the determination. Again, it's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And eventually we'll have some kind of artificial intelligence to help us do that instead. But for right now, you have to do it manually. And you have to record all the replays, you need to record everything. The reason is because you need to understand that you need to be able to go back and look at what misplays are made, with and without the tech card, and just understand how to play the game a little bit better. VOD reviews are some of the most important things, and a lot of pro players do it. I'm not saying to necessarily follow exactly what pro players do, because some of them do things differently, but that is just a thing in competitive, say, esports. Yu-Gi-Oh! I would consider an esport at this point, even though it's not necessarily the same thing as like League of Legends, Valorant, anything like that. You're not playing on a computer, you're playing in person or remote. But it's not the same thing as a regular sport, right? Of course, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. As an esport, it is always good to just record everything you're doing, everything you're playing, every time you play, because you need to be able to see and understand from your past mistakes and how to improve. Especially, I would always say just the more data you have, the better. And that's generally a good philosophy to have for esports. The more data you have on a given question, we'll say this question is, which tech is better? Which tech is better? The more data we have, it's always going to be the better, right? Every single time. We don't want less data unless we want to craft a specific narrative to hide information, or to give a maybe false understanding of a situation, or to present a narrative in a certain light, right? This is about techs, of course. So test 10 matches with and without a tech. If droplet happens to be better in, say, 50 or more scenarios, 50% or more scenarios, play droplet instead. That's the baseline. If it's overwhelming, say 67%, that's the supermajority, the magic number, the data's pretty clear. You probably won't need to do more testing with it. Again, try not to be biased. It's really hard to with certain tech cards. I like Chalice more than droplet as a general card, but droplet, just from our testing, from the team's testing, is probably better. It's probably better to play droplet for this event, just with Scythe being existing. That's the number one thing. Number two thing, and this kind of goes in with travel, make sure that you're bringing necessities, okay? Obviously clothes, make sure you have at least, I would say, 5 or 6 pairs of clothes. So after, say you're playing, you make day 2, you're going to be sweaty. And that's not just because you're, competing. It's stressful. I get it. Not why. It's because it'll be convention centers get very hot. Even though they do tend to have some kind of air conditioning, it's usually not enough. With, up to potentially 3,000 people in a venue, it's probably not going to be enough. So make sure you have a change of clothes. If you need to, change in the venue, keep your clothes in your backpack, keep them in a separate bag, keep them in a plastic bag, all together, wrap them in a nice little bow. I don't care. Make sure you have a change of clothes. If you're playing the main event, if you're playing inside events a bunch, just make sure you have that. In addition, of course, bring deodorant with you. Don't just put it on in the morning. You need to have it with you. Okay? I don't want to get into the stories with it. It will be an issue. I guarantee it. I guarantee not having deodorant will be an issue. Okay? You need to make sure you have it with you. You can just apply it on in the bathroom. No one will judge you. You want to stay fresh. You want to smell good. You don't want to smell like your average Yu-Gi-Oh player. Okay? This is not a Smash Bros. Tournament. We need to use deodorant. Pretty obvious. You can be penalized for it, but it's often not going to happen. You're probably not going to be penalized, though you can. Be aware of that. Right? And just make sure you're bringing, obviously, water bottles, snacks, masks will be required. You can't eat inside the venue, but you can step outside, and then you'll be fine. Then make sure you have all your vaccination records as required. Basic stuff, right? Make sure you're also getting a good night's rest if you're playing in the main event. Basically the entire time, especially if you make day 2. Again, pro players will do this. They will stay up, get maybe 3 hours of sleep. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay? Even if you have, a reason to, you work the day before, whatever, get some sleep. You need to. It's not going to be fun if you're on 3 hours of sleep. I've done it before. It's not fun. I've done it judging. I've done it playing. You'll get a migraine before. It just won't be fun. And again, bring water and snacks in your bag just so you have them. You don't really want to pay the exorbitant prices there. If you need to, it exists. At worst, if you're playing side events, I'll be playing in side events instead. Make sure you just go to a restaurant in the area. I hear there's really good food in the area. Go there. But it's going to be expensive. Just keep that in mind and keep your budget. You know, if you have X amount of money or it doesn't matter for you, cool. You only have a certain amount of money to spend. Make sure you're not going to give in those temptations to spend more than you have. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go into debt for this card game, specifically for Nats, even though it is cool. There'll be vendors there. They're going to have marked up cards. This leads to my next point. Make sure you have your cards before you go triple, quadruple check. Okay? You don't want to pay for cards. Nothing against vendors. I'll do it myself. But for national championships, they will bump up cards that they know are going to be popular. Droplet, maybe tactics, hand traps, stuff like that. Deck cores, for those who aren't prepared. Don't fall into that trap. Okay? You will regret it. Make sure you have sleeves as well. They will have sleeves, even if you have to get cheap Ultra Pro Eclipses, whatever. You buy, 5 packs of them, use them the entire event, cool. You have your main sleeves still available, right? If you use Dragon Shields, make sure you have like a pack or 2 available. Again, it's going to be, and that's no one's specific fault, unless they are specifically not washing their hands. Again, good hygiene, make sure you're washing your hands. Make sure that you have extra sleeves in case someone tries to, angle shoot you, shark, anything like that. Just make sure you're prepared. That's the idea. You always want to have more than you need rather than not have something that you do need, right? It's going to be hard. It'll be hard to make a checklist of everything. We can prepare a checklist. I'll have one in the description below of what you guys will need. Of course, at this point, you should have your flights and hotels booked or Airbnbs, anything like that. If you don't, you're in trouble. In that you'll be paying a lot more for tickets and hotels by not being prepared. You have to book these events early, like 2 months in advance. As soon as they're announced, you have to be on it. That's generally how it is. If you guys missed out this time, that's okay. There'll be more events. Just make sure, be aware. Right? Okay. For the actual event, I think we have just a couple of decks that will do well. I think there's a lot of variety. I don't necessarily think it's a good kind of variety, though. I personally like centralized formats, but it's not for most players. I think most players do not like, one dominant deck. That's a whole discussion on its own. For this event, I think there are, 8 to 10 decks that could top. Okay, we're going to say that right now. I think the top 5 overall, and in no order, because there are a bunch, right? So, a bunch of decks right now. Top 5, I think we have the Punk Adventure Therion, or Punk Therion, something like that. Sword Soul, Fluandereeze, Dragon Link Adventure. I think that deck really popped up past couple weeks. It's been doing really, really well. And again, Vespia, it's always going to be there. And probably some kind of under the rug deck. Whether that be Drytron, Sky Striker Mine, Branded Eldritch, anything like that. I think we pretty much know what's going to be there. We just don't know everything. I think we'll probably see just like adventure soup decks, playing like Sangan, Carbonetta, Red Rose Dragon, that whole package, 5-Rax decks, basically. 5-Rax Turbo, right? Those are the top 5. I think those aren't the only decks that we will see in top 32, or at least day 2. I think we'll see Salmon Great. I think we'll see Libromancers. We'll probably see something like that. We'll probably see Predaplants, whether they be playing branded or just some other generic engines. We'll probably see more of the branded versions, though. I think we're going to see just a bunch of different branded SP variants or just branded variants. It's pretty much guaranteed at this point. I just don't know how many. I think majority of decks that top will be Punk Therion, Adventure decks, and Sword Soul. Even though Sword Soul has a lot of negatives going for it right now. And again, that is the deck that I like the most. I will probably be playing it for side of it, something like that. I just don't think it's the most well positioned because Token Adventure does hit it just like it hits the some of the other decks. Marincess, I think we'll see maybe one in top 32. I just don't think a lot of those decks are good enough and have enough room to spare for tech choices. I think the adventure pile decks are just good enough, though, to not have to play techs unless they're just in the side deck. So like Token Collector, Droplet, Power Going Second cards, Hand Traps, etc. I think that's pretty much guaranteed at this point. I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises, and honestly, it's kind of how it is. That's okay. That's how it was in 2019, last time we had a North American National Championship. And that's okay. It's okay to be a little bit boring. It's okay. It'll be the exact same as we had before. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't have to be exciting. Nothing else has to come out of the woodwork. That brings us into the next couple weeks. So for OzoneTCG specifically, we have 3 guides coming out. I haven't told you guys this yet. They're going to be, I have said though, that they're going to be like the Albaz Strike deck guide we had in April. 3 decks. In not their exact order. It's going to be Sprite or Splite, whichever translation you use. Tier Elements, whatever they'll be. We'll probably see those reveals within the next week or so, maybe even at the North American National Championship. We'll see some reveals there. Again, we'll have some memories with the creator. And then MathMech. That's going to be the one. Specifically why I asked Nick about his opinions on MathMech for Power of the Elements in his Salmon Grey deck profile the other day. Okay. We are releasing, I will say this, the MathMech deck guide first. That's done. It's done and scheduled at this point. Completely done. Everything's ready. It is queued up in the account right now. That will release probably a week or so after Nats. It is huge. There's a lot of information in all of these. MathMech one is probably the most straightforward one. As much as I don't want to admit that, it is probably the easiest one. Tier Elements is probably going to be the hardest one to show. Currently, we are working on Tier Elements in the Sprite Guide. Tier Elements one is much more ambitious because it covers so much more for the rest of the year, the next 6 to 7 months before the deck even probably has a chance to get hit. That's a lot. And that leads us into Power of the Elements. This set is huge. I think it is Dual Lines 2 at this point. We don't know the world premiere theme. Honestly, I really don't care at this point. We have our own Burning Abyss, Shaddoll, Tellarknight jumble from the box. That's how it is. We already know a bunch of the decks are going to be here. If the world premiere is good, cool. Fantastic. We already have a solid understanding of what's going to be good. If that shakes it up a little bit, cool. I don't see it. It hasn't happened in years. Libromancer has been closest to coming to be real. I guess technically Beat Trooper is too. That's a whole can of worms I don't want to get into. But chances are the world premiere theme will not be good. That's okay. Again, we know what's going to be good already. We're going to just go with it. So, Power of the Elements comes out. There will be a lot of things going on. A lot of videos, a lot of news, a lot of profiles, a bunch of gameplay. Almost too much. It's going to be a lot. The entire format's going to be flipped on its head. Just be aware of that. Post-Nationals, besides some of the deck profiles you see from the National Championship, it will be all moving forward. Because once Power of the Elements comes out, that's it. We'll have a ban list. It'll probably kill off a bunch of the old decks that are able to compete with Sprite and Tier Elements. That's going to be it, though. It's going to be a whole new format, probably feel like a whole new game, honestly. And that'll carry us through Darkwing Blast and Magnificent Mavens and through the end of the year. We'll have more discussions on that, of course, but you need to just be aware of what's going on. We'll have leaks, we'll repost them and show you guys the original source of those once they happen. We'll talk about rarities. We'll have a bunch of ratios. I will be opening up 3 full cases on stream and uploading them to the channel for you guys to replay and watch. You guys will know the quantities that I receive. I will not be selling all of them. I do need at least 1 core of each deck for the team, and that is how it is. And that's okay. I'll be picking up more cards. We're going to be powering through with the TCG Player Store. We're really focusing on that because it is quite enjoyable to do, in addition to the videos. But just be aware. Sneak peek, probably should go to it. It's probably going to be good. It's cool. Good for casual players who like, say, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and those who want to play competitively, again, with Tier Elements and Sprite. This is going to be a huge set. Make sure you're prepared. Honestly, if you want to offload cards, do it at Nats. If you don't want to play until Power of the Elements is out, do it at Nats. Or maybe even a week after, where really take a different turn. We'll probably see a lot of buyouts happen. They've already started to happen because of Darkwing Blast. And we'll talk about those again later once some of these big videos are done. I am personally playing Tier Elements, more likely than not, for events, as well as Mathmech. I think those decks are the most enjoyable. Sprite is cool. I do like it. It is a very strong deck. Just not the thing that I would want to play for self-fulfillment purposes. I don't want to play that. I would play that for an event though. Say, a larger event, 10 to 12 rounds. I would play that because it's easy to do. It's a really easy deck. You can make a bunch of misplays and still do well with it, and it's okay. That is okay. I just wouldn't want to be taxed so much for the entire event. But I think for smaller events, I'll play Tier Elements and Mathmech, because I think those decks are really, really cool. Mathmech especially, I think, has a lot of potential, and you guys see that in the deck guide. I'm super excited. It was really fun to make.